In my lifetime, I have seen coverage on all kinds of protests, all kinds of social activism, all kinds of everything from when I was little to now. And I've heard it through people talking, I've seen it in the news, newspapers, wherever, magazines. And the past 3 years, there's been 4,296 protests according to Catherine Caruso, and they've all had different reasons behind them, and they've all had different outcomes. They've had different impacts, big, small, whatever, but they've all gotten somewhere. They've all led to something. And protests are occurring always. Social activism happening always. Go on social media, you'll see it. Watch the news, you'll see it. It never stops. And I consider myself to be a social activist, and I've experienced it. I've read about it. I've done my research. I participate on social media stuff and all that, since right now, we can't go out and really protest without the masks and all that. So it's kind of hard to go out. But I believe that protests are the best way and the most beneficial way to get a point across, because there's so much coverage on them, so much media coverage, because the news gets it, social media gets it, we get it on our phones, the newspapers get it, the magazines talk about it. It's never a dull moment with them, I think. But being, what comes with social activism is putting yourself out there and draining yourself mentally and physically. But honestly, it's worth it, especially when you get to watch the change happen, and that you're tired, and it gets tiring, but I think it's worth it. Putting yourself in a position to potentially get hurt is just, it's intense. And in Chicago, during the George Floyd protests, 85 people were shot, 24 of them were killed, and over 1,200 were arrested. And this all happened within the first weekend of protests. According to Heather Sharon from WTTW, it's been nearly a month since this all happened, so the numbers have changed drastically. But I think it's necessary to share where this started and where we're going, and seeing how much has happened, but how much is changing. How many cases have been opened, how many people are getting justice, and how many people are getting arrested, like the police officers and all that. But like I mentioned before, this can also be mentally draining, just having to go out and fear for your life when you're trying to protest. But it could also be extremely rewarding. Speaking from a point of view where I'm not the oppressed, people, I'm not a person of color, so I cannot personally say how mentally draining it is, but I also can't explain how mentally draining it can be on them, especially right now, because they already were fearing for their lives from police and from brutality in the streets, but now they're fighting for justice for people of color, and having to go out on the street and protest is already scary enough as it is. Being oppressed and seen less and trying to get help is nearly impossible right now. In therapy, Olukeli Amala says that she also wanted to protect the image of Black people who are already viewed problematic in our society. This is debilitating and very stressful. She wasn't even able to go to therapy without feeling oppressed and singled out. And that's why she's protesting. And the fact that she protests, is mentally drained, tries to get help, and then can't, is an issue. It is an issue. Becoming a part of the whole social activism lifestyle may feel useless to some people, because it's like, oh, I'm just one person, what difference is it gonna make? But imagine if you go into it and you influence 10 people, and those 10 people influence 10 more people. It just branches out, and it just, starting small, branching out, it helps. I'm not gonna lie, it does help. Starting with small steps especially helps, like starting on social media, reading about it, signing the petitions, seeing what's going on, educating yourself. Educating yourself first. For signing the petitions right now is a really big thing, since a lot of people can't go out because of the coronavirus. 8.63 million people have already signed a petition for Breonna Taylor, for her to get justice, since she was shot in her own home, wrongly accused, and there has been no justice really. 9 million was the goal, but we've already seen change, according to change.org, we haven't even hit 9 million yet, and things are already happening. So if we hit the goal, you know, we could change things. Sharing, and I cannot stress this enough, sharing the petitions on social media helps. It helps, because it's like how I said before, the one person influences 10, and those 10 influence 10 more. It goes, and that's how they got 8.6 million signatures, and it helps. I think that, like, petitions shouldn't be something that's looked over, because it's so not time consuming, you know. It takes 2 seconds to sign a petition. You put your name and you send it, and then you can share it, which takes 2 more seconds. And it's clearly making a difference, because we are seeing results day by day. Is it slow? Yes. But is it working? Yes. It is a prolonged problem that we've just been pushing to the side for some reason that hasn't really been talked about. And I can be guilty for that. I didn't talk about it before the whole George Floyd thing, and I was like, you know what, this is a problem. You're right. But while you're doing the petitions, you should also be educating yourself, you know. Read onto it. Don't just jump in head first, because I know it is, like, it's a lot. It's intense. You want to, like, some people do want to get started right away, but you need to know what you're talking about before you, like, get into it, because you could, you know, start issues or cause problems, and I don't know, you just want it to be a mess. So educate yourself first before you start walking into things, so you don't have, like, that wall of ignorance before you know, enter. I do love protests, but as peaceful as we try to keep it, and as fair as we try to keep it, there's always going to be someone who believes otherwise, and people who come in with, like, controversial opinions. With the controversial opinions, protests can lead to riots and, like, chaos, which can lead to destroyed economies, which is what we have already. But, you know, it can get worse. It can get a whole lot worse. And destroying cities and economies leaves a bad image for us. And people who have extremely controversial opinions and come in and try to share that, yes, they have a freedom of speech, but when you're trying to be rude during the peaceful protest, it just doesn't work like that. So you just have to be careful, you know, at the protests, because it can get messy, and we just have to, like, keep our priorities in check. That's really the only negative thing that can happen in a protest, I hope. So as controversial as social activism can be, it can be really impactful. And after discussing, you know, the importance of social activism and everything that comes with it, and how it can be slightly dangerous, I think it's worth it. So I think we need to not feed into the actions of the oppressor and imagine ourselves in the position of being the oppressed. We wouldn't want the inequality that they perceive.